Subvert normality.
Hello, I'm Matt Everett and welcome to The First Time on Six Music. This is the series where we meet some of the most influential and best-loved musicians around and look at the seminal first musical moments that shaped their lives and their careers. This week's guest fronts a band who, since their formation in Glasgow in 1982, have never stood still. They've been a jangle pop outfit, Stones rock obsessives, psychedelic rave music pioneers, industrial noise merchants and pretty much everything in between. Very few bands have released such a collection of diverse and brilliant albums and, as their new record Chaosmosis proves, they're still as artistically restless as ever. My guest on The First Time this week is Primal Scream singer Bobby Gillespie. Here Bobby talks about the country, western and blues music that inspired him as a child and the incredible impact that punk rock had on him, especially the Pistols and the Clash, whose spirit he channeled directly into the formation of Primal Scream. And he chats about his short tenure as the drummer with the Jesus and Mary Chain. Bobby also documents how Primal Scream's immersion on the rave culture of the 80s gave birth to their genre-bending album Screamadelica, how the drug problems that followed nearly ended the band's career, and their creative rebirth with the experimental records Vanishing Point and Exterminator. But I started by asking, as I do with all my guests, when was Bobby first aware of music?
My dad used to have a reel-to-reel, like Philips tape recorder, quite a large thing, and because he ran a folk club in the early 60s. In Glasgow this is, and I'm just guessing that he taped some of the performances. I don't know, I've never asked him. I just remember this tape recorder when I was a kid, but there was a tape recording of me singing She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. I'm not going to say it was the Beatles, but because I don't actually have that honest memory, but I know that tape recording exists, and my dad or my mum probably still has it. But the two things I do remember, and no one's going to believe this, right?
Go on.
Is my mum playing Hank Williams. I noticed it because of his voice. It was like Morning the Blues. You know, it was like, it was like that kind of, it was this guy moaning the blues. It's a 10-inch. My mum had Hank Williams. It was a blue cover, moaning. I think it was called Moaning the Blues.
When my baby moved out and the blues moved in, there wasn't nothing I could do but mosey around with my head in my hand. Lord, what am I coming to? I just keep moaning the blues.
That's a good place to start.
It's the best place to start. And then the other one was my dad. I guess it was late 60s. I've got to thank my mum and dad for this. Ray Charles. It was Ray Charles' greatest hits, but it was on a stateside. And it was all Ray Charles basically singing Hank Williams songs like Your Cheating Heart.
Wow.
So obviously, as a very young person, I didn't know about songwriters or who wrote what or who did what, but the fact that these songs kind of got into my head. And there was another song in the Ray Charles album called Busted. It's like a country song, I guess. I mean, you know, whatever happens in the guy's life, you know, my wife is down, my wife has gone on, my wife is all wrong, my wife has gone home, and I'm busted.
That's a good lyric as well.
But I'm busted. Whatever happens, the guy's busted. And then there was a Cincinnati Kid, which was a film that Steve McQueen was in. It was about a gambler, so Ray Charles did the theme song for that, but that was on the album. But I just remember that it was a Deep Purple cover with a picture of Ray Charles, and there was these kind of songs like Your Cheating Heart and Take These Chains From My Heart and Set Me Free. They was heartbreaking songs. I guess those songs were being played in the house, you know.
My bills are all due and the baby needs shoes and I'm busted. Cotton is down to a quarter of a pound, but I'm busted. I got a cow that went dry and a hen that won't lay. A big stack of bills that gets bigger each day. The county's gonna haul my belongings away 'cause I'm busted. I went to my brother to ask for a loan 'cause I was busted. I hate to beg like a dog without his bone, but I'm busted. My brother said there ain't a thing I can do. My wife and my kids are all down with the flu, and I was just thinking about calling on you, and I'm busted. Well, I am no thief, but a man can go wrong when he's busted. The food that we canned last summer is gone, and I'm busted. The fields are all bare, and the cotton won't grow. Me and my family got to pack up and go, but I'll make a living just where I don't know, 'cause I'm busted. I'm broke. No bread. I mean, like nothing.
What about the first things that you went out and bought with your money?
I think it was Blockbuster by The Sweet.
That's a good song again.
Which is pretty good. I think me and my brother chipped in for it.
You do look back on those glam bands, and there's that thing that, you know, with the exception of maybe Bowie, the rest of them just look like brickies and plumbers, but happen to be done up in that makeup. They look brilliant.
Well, Steve Priest, the guitar player in The Sweet, wore an SS uniform and with a full uniform with a swastika armband, eye makeup, long hair, glittery face, and knee-length silver platform boots. So that's going to have an impression on a young man. or a young girl, I thought, yeah, I want to be in a band with that.
You better beware, you better take care, you better watch out if you got long black hair. You come from behind, you go out of your mind, you better not go, you never know what you'll find. You look in his eyes, don't be surprised if you don't know what's going on behind his disguise. Nobody knows where Buster goes. You steal your woman out from under your nose. Does anyone know the way to be here? Someone say we just haven't got a clue what to do. Does anyone know the way? There's got to be a way to Blockbuster.
What about the first gig? It's always a really important thing.
Thin Lizzy.
It's pre-punk, but still, you're talking about a pretty strong band.
At their height of their powers.
Where was it?
Glasgow Polo. And I think it was a Johnny the Fox tour. And I went with Alan McGee. And,
What do you remember from the show?
I think that the opening song was Jailbreak, because they had the sirens and the smoke and everything, and it was just, it was like beyond, the sirens, the police, flashing police lights, sirens and smoke bombs and everything, and I don't know if there was smoke bombs, but I'm just imagining that, but they definitely had the sirens and the police lights. They're spinning round and round and round. Phil Lynott had a bass with a mirrored scratch plate.
That's right, yeah.
So they would have a guy working a spotlight to hit Phil's bass, and every time Phil moved, the spotlight would, flash onto somebody different in the hall. And
That's a good trick.
And I remember feeling that, McGee said years later, he goes, Ian, when you left that gig, all you said was, yeah, Phil touched me, he shone the light on me from the bass, I definitely felt that night that when the light hit the scratch plate, it bounced off and it hit me. I know that it does.
What was your first punk rock moment?
The first one was Buying NME, and I think it was Easter 77, and the Clash were on the cover. I read the interview, and even before that, I think there was a kid at school had sometime in 77, he had like NME or Melody Makers, one of these music papers. I never bought them, right? This kid had one, and I thought it looked amazing, very powerful imagery, and so even before I heard the music, I saw the imagery, and it touched me. And also, I think I'm just remembering now, the first time punk really touched me was this is the truth, right? I was in school, in class, must have been the summer 77, and just to get out of the class, I said, can I go to the toilet? And I walked downstairs, and my school was a fairly new school. It was built in the brutalist style. Kings Park Secondary School, south side of Glasgow, and I was walking down the stairs, there was a photocopied poster for the school debating society. There was a photograph of Johnny Rotten. I didn't know he was Johnny Rotten, on his knees at the 100 Club, and he was brutally shorn hair like a concentration camp guy, ripped jumper, Weblex, mods, collar popping out of the top, ripped from under the armpit to the bottom seam, all ripped, and old men's 50s D-mob suit trousers, turn-ups, and teddy boy shoes with huge thick crepe soles, pint glasses at his feet, mic stand across his knees, screaming into the mic. And I was like, whoa. And it said, punk rock, what does it mean? School debating society. So I stood transfixed looking at that photograph for a very long time. And so before I heard the music, there was the image. Yeah, and then I guess the first few records, me and my brother bought Peaches by the Stranglers, which would Go Bloody Go on the B-side. We got All Around the World by the Jam, Sex Pistols, of course. used to go and look at the Clash record cover, and then eventually I bought it. I was quite impressed because it had on the back side of it the Notting Hill riots with the police and the kind of Rasta youth, the Jamaican youth. I watched a documentary about the Notting Hill riots with my dad one night on BBC, and I was very impressed that they were taking on the police. Because I used to go to a lot of football matches when I was a teenager, and there was always pitch invasions and loads of violence at the games. I mean, I was not a violent person, but yeah, I would see this stuff happening. It was basically like kind of social disturbance, which I found pretty fascinating. So
put the two together, put the music and that together.
Yeah, they had the song White Riot. I was like, well, you know, so I was kind of interested in social disturbance and, you know, upset and stuff. So typical teenage kind of obviously still a teenager, still interested in that stuff.
What were the first Mary Chain gigs like? Because they're one of those bands that the mythology, even for you to this day, the mythology still kind of hangs around them still, which is an amazing thing for a band to keep that.
The first gig I ever did with the Mary Chain was the day after the IRA blew up the Grand Hotel when they attempted to assassinate Margaret Thatcher.
Really?
That may have been October 11, 1984, and our gig was at the venue in Glasgow. It was a day later, and the Mary Chain and ourselves had clubbed in together to hire this venue, hire a PA and promote our own show. I designed the flyer. The flyer was the hand grenade poster from the Lindsay Anderson film If. It's got a hand grenade and Malcolm McDowell. One side he's public schoolboy clothes, other side he's looks like an urban guerrilla with a machine gun. And it said, If, which side are you on? Jesus, Mary Chain, Primal Scream, Biff Bang Pow, Ochre 5. So my first gig for Primal Scream, I sang and played guitar. 10 minutes later, I was playing drums for the Mary Chain. Then after that, we went and played a tour of Germany. It was Biff Bang Pow, Jesus, Mary Chain, Jasmine Minks. And the bill rotated every night. But we were kind of the bottom of the bill, really. Right? Both bands had records out, singles out. We hadn't had a record out. We were waiting for Upside Down to be released.
Yeah.
So those gigs in Germany were amazing. I just had the time of my life. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, I love Jim, William and Douglas. Just love them. Still love them.
want to ask you about Love, because they're a band that were really important to early Primals, weren't they?
Yeah, they still are. Arthur Lee was like a godhead to us, you know.
When did you first fall in love with Love?
Probably early 80s, you know, because we went through punk, post-punk, and we were disillusioned by music in the 80s, you know. So we started looking back at the 60s. Obviously, Velvet Underground, Doors, Stooges, and then we discovered Love, you know.
Strange band in many ways.
Yeah, and I think that's what we obviously, we went into Sid Barrett's Pink Floyd, and Sid Barrett, you know. So it was Arthur Lee, Sid Barrett, you know, Jim Morrison, Lou Reed, Rocky Erickson, then we got into the Seeds, Sky Saxon. But Arthur Lee had that kind of fractured poetry. They're an outsiders band.
Of the time, but completely not of the time, if
He's
you
like
know what I mean.
a black guy he was the first black rock star, right? I mean, no, Little Richard was, but in the kind of counterculture rock underground, you know. He was at the time of the Byrds and the Doors and the Stones and all them and the Beatles and everybody. I guess he never belonged anywhere. He was like too black for white people and too white for black people.
Did that appeal to you as the Primals were starting to kind of form and get more of an identity? It was like, there's that slight psychosis.
Well, the whole thing about Arthur being on acid 24 hours a day and, you know, walking around LA with these kind of crazy little sunglasses that one was red, one was blue, but they were like a kaleidoscope, you know, and just the way he dressed, like he was the original black hippie way before Jimi Hendrix. He was like a freak, you know, and there was real deep mystery to these
especially
figures.
Love.
Even still, they try and make a film about Love, but the legend of Arthur Lee and Love is still impenetrable. He was a strange guy. I knew him, you know, became friends with him. And
really, what was he like?
He was really nice. He was always really nice to me, friendly, and that means a lot to me, you know. He was a nice guy. Hung out with him a few times, but he had an edge. There was an edge to him that was, well, he never showed that edge to me, you know. He was kept people at a distance.
What Love track should we play at this juncture?
Your Mind and We Belong Together. That's a good one, isn't it?
I'd like to understand just why I feel like I have been through hell, but you tell me I haven't even started yet. To live here you've got to give more than you get. That's I know, but I said it's alright. I'd like to understand today, then maybe I would know who I was when it was yesterday. The seasons and the reasons are on display, and I know so many people, they just seem to clutter up my mind, and if it's mine, throw it away, throw it again, once for my girlfriend. So many voices, don't let them stop between my ears. But it appears that there they are, though they're wrong, 10,000 strong. Oh, yeah. I'm locking my heart in the closet. I don't need anyone, oh no, no, no. You find me behind the door, and all of the fallout faces from long ago, I can't erase this.
That's Your Mind and We Belong Together by Love, the final single recorded by the original lineup of the band in 1968, and the choice of my guest here on the first time, Mr. Bobby Gillespie.
Six Music.
Six Music.
BBC Radio 6 Music.
Come together. Oh, come together. Oh, come.
I'm Matt Everett, and this is the first time on Six Music, where we look at the key first moments in an artist's career. And my guest this week is Primal Scream singer Bobby Gillespie, and that was 1990's Come Together, a track that, in a more spaced out version, would feature on the Scream's legendary album Screamadelica. So Screamadelica and the single Loaded marks the point that Primal Scream mutated from being a straight rock and roll band into a group that would blend rave and techno and house music with psychedelia and 60s guitars. A mutation that owed a lot to Ecstasy.
Should you be watching that?
Alan McGee and myself went to see Happy Mondays in Brighton. I lived in Brighton at the end of the 80s, and we really dug them and stuff. And I think Alan went backstage and got some ease. He gave us them, and he said, wait till you take this drug, it's going to change your life. I think Alan had been going to the Hacienda. And he lived in Manchester for a bit. Tony Wilson got him a flat above the factory offices in Palatine Road. He was good mates with Tony Wilson. I can't remember them working, but McGee said they worked. I don't really remember, but I remember being in my flat or his flat waiting for this drug to work, like waiting for the universe to change. But at some point we must have taken them and they did work, because throughout 89 we were touring our second album and no one would come and see us. And on that second album there was a song called I'm Losing More Than I'll Ever Have.
Please stop crying. I know you know I've been lying. Please stop crying. I know your love for me is dying. There ain't nothing I wouldn't do to get myself back close to you. Please stop crying. I'm sorry I hurt you.
During the summer of 89, Jeff Barrett was doing our press. He now runs Heavenly Records. We were a much maligned band. They were old indie fans that like the jingly jangly stuff, hated the new hard rock high energy direction. And the music press hated us because they were at the Pixies and Throwing Muses and American college academic rock. So we made that second album, we got released, no one really cared, except there was a fanzine called Boyzone, and in the fanzine Andy Weatherall wrote for it under the name of Audrey Witherspoon. And he put in his playlist for that summer, Primal Scream, second album, all the ballads. And Jeff Barrett, I remember him showing it to me and saying, look, somebody likes you.
Somebody cares.
I was like, go and meet this guy.
I lose more than I ever had. I feel bad, feel so bad, yeah. I mess your hand, but you still possess me. Baby, 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 have mercy on me.
We had been slowly starting to go to raves and stuff, you know, acid house parties, and realising that that's where the real energy in British youth culture was. It wasn't in the rock scene. It wasn't in American rock. It was an acid house, and it was new, and it was illicit, it was underground, it was outlaw, it was sexy, it was just everything that rock and roll used to be, this was. We slowly got submerged in that scene, and I think it was either Andrew Ennis or Jeff Barrett, I got to give those guys the credit, came up with the idea of why do we ask Andy Weatherall to mix one of our songs. And the one song on the album that we hadn't played live to Toby the drummer was I'm Losing More Than I'll Ever Have, because we played along to that with a drum machine. The rest of it was fine, it was kind of sloppy, high energy rock and roll, but for that song we had to keep perfect time. So that was a song we felt would work well for a remix. So that was the one we asked Weatherall to remix, and that became Loaded. But it took about 3 attempts.
Just what is it that you want to do?
Well, we want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. And we want to get loaded. And we want to have a good time. And that's what we're going to do.
Well, wait, baby, let's go.
We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a party.
Just what is it that you want to do?
I'm gonna get deep down, I said. I'm gonna get deep down. Woo, hey!
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
In the wake of Screamadelica, I mean, it's a big record to follow up. Give Up But Don't Give Up. There's some great things on that. You got to work with Tom Dowd, George Clinton. But was it hard to move away from a record that meant so much to so many people?
I don't think we thought too much about it at the time. Nobody sat down and said, right, how are we going to follow this up? There was no plan. It was just
instinctive.
No, it wasn't. It was just chaos. And in the summer of 1992, I remember I had the keys to a rehearsal room in Brighton, and every day I would go down, open it up, and I'd wait for the band to come from London, and some days nobody would turn up. They would go on and on and on, and then they would turn up, and guys would be buying heroin over there, and then the guy was selling them heroin was selling me speed, and then we would go in and try and write something for half an hour, and then everybody would just split. They'd always make excuses, we've got to go back to London, and I'd lock the place up, and it went on like that for a few weeks in the summer of 92, but no one actually spoke about anything. I think everybody just probably thought, oh, they'll get it together.
How did you get out of that then? How did you pull yourself out of the situation?
Well, at the end of that year, they put us in a studio. We tried to record with Jimmy Miller, who was the Stones producer.
Legend.
It fell apart. Dick Green at Creation decided to pull the plug on it. We had a band meeting, and everybody was screaming at each other, just out of their minds. And I just went, I'm out of here. I just thought, this is insane. And I was back the next day. And then I guess at the start of the next year, I don't know, we started writing songs, and they became the songs for Give It But Don't Give Up. And then that was the next stage. It just happened the way it happened. Nobody sat down and said, all right, we're going to make a rock record in Memphis. We didn't know what to do. We'd written the songs, and I think it was Joe McEwen, who was a guy who signed us to Sire, to Warner Brothers in America. He was big into soul music, which we all were. And it was his idea to hire Tom Dowd and go Memphis. Because McGee thought if we went to LA or New York, there'd be deaths in the band.
What saved you guys then? Was it family? Was it a desire to make music well as as you could?
Well, when we made the Vanishing Point record, Semi cleaned up, and so did Andrew Ennis. Because after Give It, we felt we could do better. We really wanted to do something more experimental and psychedelic and less structured. We wanted to break down the whole conventional song structure and do something that was just pure expression. I thought, I'm going to move to London. I'll give it 6 months, try and make an album.
Kickstart things.
If it don't happen, then we just forget it. I went to the studio 5 days a week, starting at 12 to 6. Andrew Ennis, myself. And then we started the process and made Vanishing Point. You know, it was like, we just were serious about making good art, making cool music that really meant something to ourselves, you know. Because people had written us off again, you know, after the Give It album.
Let's talk about another band that means a lot to you. When did you first fall in love with the Beach Boys?
Probably end of the 80s, I think.
Late again, okay.
Yeah, quite late. I was not bothered about them really before. I mean, obviously I knew Surfing USA and everything, but I think Pet Sounds was the one that got us in, and then from that we got into Smile. So we got into the real sad stuff. Like
Dennis Wilson stuff.
We got into songs like Caroline Noah and Let's Go Away for a While, and the actual song Pet Sounds, the instrumentals. We loved the instrumentals and Pet Sounds. It was the more reflective, internalised side, less the party side. And that then had a big influence on how we wrote songs for Screamadelica, like Higher Than the Sun. I was trying to be Brian Wilson.
What's the Beach Boys song we should play?
Till I Die.
With Exterminator, it's like the most overtly political thing you'd done up to that point. And normally I'd ask, when was the first time an artist became politicised? But knowing your kind of family background, I guess it was from as long as you can remember.
There.
Because your dad was a union leader, wasn't he?
My dad was he was a general secretary for the west of Scotland for the SOGAT union, which was the print industry's labourers. So I had a politicised background because of my dad, but I was into rock and roll. My dad's thing was politics, my thing was rock and roll.
But on Exterminator, there's a heavy agenda.
I think the way to put it is I'm politically conscious, but so are all my friends. I mean, I was just trying to write about the culture of the time. And the culture of the time was that me and my friends were all neutralising ourselves by taking hard drugs. Instead of using our voice and our talents and our energy to do good work into the community, you know, I think a work of art is it's an act of love to the whole of the world. I really, really believe that, right? And, you know, we were doing artworks, but, you know, we were messing up a lot. Some people died. Some people just never realised their full potential. You know, I was in the drug culture in the 90s. I was like, well, there's way more drugs than ever now, and they're cheaper. And why has it been tolerated? Is it control? Does it suit the authorities? So I started thinking about that stuff, and some of that stuff went into the song Exterminator and that album. So if you want to call it a political album, it is, because it's dealing with those issues, you know. And I guess you had the song Swastika Eyes, and I remember at the end of the 90s, Britain suddenly was having military build-ups and sending troops to Bosnia. I honestly thought this is leading to something bigger. Suddenly we're getting involved in hotspots all over the world. I don't know, all that stuff was on my mind, you know.
Scream occupy a very special place in people's hearts. There's not a band that's been through what you've been through, that's taken so many different pathways, and it's very obvious you still really care.
Oh yeah.
Have you kept that? Are you just still in love with rock and roll like you always were?
Yeah, still
Is
in
it
love
the same as looking at that picture
of Johnny Rotten?
of Johnny Rotten?
Oh yeah, he's always there in the back of my head. He was the guy that started it for me. I mean, obviously I love Bowie and Gary Glitter and Sweet and Slade and Suzi Quatro, and I love that music. But the guy that made me, sent me on this path to creative life was Rotten. They put the thing into my head as a teenager that I could do this. Nobody, my parents, my teachers, ever thought I could be a creative person. I was basically, at the age of 13, designated for industrial scrap heap. Nobody knew that I could be creative, but the Pistols and McLaren said, anybody can do this. You can do it. That gave me the courage to be myself. And that's why I love Rowan. And that's why I love the Pistols, why I love Malcolm McLaren. It's like Andrew Innes said, you gave your whole life to the Sex Pistols. And he was right. He's a beautiful quote.
So the last song we'll play should be a Pistol song. What should it be then?
17.
Why that one?
I love the fact he was saying, I'm a lazy sword, I'm a lazy Sid. And, see my face, not a trace of reality. I just speed, that's all I need. And we don't wear flares. It's like a manifesto. 17. And I thought that was the opening song in Bollocks, because in the back sleeve, it's just, there's no side one and side two. Right. So I just bought the album and put that on, but I think it's the start of side two. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it
so
is.
There you go, I got it back to front. And to me, that was the best way of opening the album. You're only 29, got a lot to learn, but when your mummy dies, she will not return. See my face, not a trace of no reality. I don't work, I just speed, that's all I need.